Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures, and today we're doing part 62 of our Jurassic World Evolution 2 mod spotlights. We take a look at some of the wonderful mods people have been making and compare them to their real life fossil counterparts. So today, we've got a very interesting assortment of animals, couple remasters, we've got a whole genus represented, or like technically two, but most likely one, but that's going to be really interesting to talk about. So we're going to be starting off with one of the very many Master Doot mods we have going on, because Master Doot has been pumping out mods left and right. We're going to start with a really cool animal. We've got Dinosaurus. Here we are. So this is Dinosaurus. Why you got to do that to me? That bug needs to go. It really does. But anyway, this is Dinosaur. What's it? Unanosaurus. That's how you say it. Is a really early or really cool sauropodomorph. So it isn't a sauropod, but a really early relative. What we would consider prosauropods used to. But these guys lived around the Yunnan province of China about 199 to 183 million years ago, making them live in the early Jurassic. I was going to say Cretaceous, but that's not true. So, the first species, there are technically two or three species, depending on who you ask, but there are mostly considered two species. So, this was first discovered by C.C. Young or Yan Zhouzhen. Found the first skeletons in the upper Zhenhua member of the Lufengosaurus Formation in China. That dates to the Cimmerian stage of the early Jurassic, so quite early in that time. And the fossil itself was composed of 20 incomplete skeletons. It included two skulls, and they were referred to the base species H. hungi, which is the type species, and the other one, which might be the same as H. hungi, is Robustus. So Robustus might be the same as hungi, but sometimes they're split, depending on who you asked. And then in 2007, this was the species described. Lu Jingchang found another species in Yangi, and it was quite different in terms of its skeleton, but it was also much larger. So these guys got to about, the other species, Harangi, got to about 7 meters. These guys got to about 13 meters long, and which is only 7 meters, and not quite as well known, and we don't know the skull, but it's likely would have been quite similar. The type specimen was found in the of Yangi was found in the Fengzhou Formation in the Zhenhua Formation in the Yunnan province of China, and comes from the Pliocene stage of the early Jurassic period, so about 191 to 183 million years ago, and it's housed in the collection of Zhenjiang Museum. So it seems these guys were probably a little bit younger, maybe just got bigger over time. And in 2013, there was a Unanosaurus robustus was described from a juvenile, but we kind of don't really know that. I'm not going to really go too much into that. But yeah, a really, really cool animal. These are you could say prosauropod. That's not really a term used anymore, but they are a sauropodomorph, so a really early relatives. This is when basically the early sauropodomorphs were starting to get big, right before they moved on to their two legs. So they're quite large, quadrupedal, or sometimes bipedal herbivores. So they may have walked around on their forelimbs sometimes, but may have also walked bipedally. It's kind of will they, won't they kind of thing. They're quite big as well. And they range from 7 meters, and then the largest species to 4 meters high, 13 meters long, which is M. youngi. So really, really interesting. They also have really unique teeth compared to other early sauropodomorphs. So they had teeth that were shelf-sharpening because they ground against each other as they fed. And actually, these teeth are actually quite advanced compared to a lot of other early sauropodomorphs, and actually share this feature a lot more with later sauropods. So that's a really interesting feature as well. Though scientists not consider Unanosaurus to be especially close to sauropods, or later sauropods, and this has maybe been a thing because of convergent evolution. So they may have evolved the same trait independently of each other, which is quite interesting. And as I mentioned, there is the type species Yuangi, which is the small one. Youngi is the big one, and Robustus is kind of we don't know really whether H. youngi were juveniles of Robustus, things like that. It's kind of neither will they, won't they kind of thing. But really, really cool. So the holotypes, I mentioned all that. And they shared their environment with some actually pretty cool animals. So they lived with the Ornithischians, Dinosaurus, and Thanatotheristes. Ginsengosaurus is another sauropod I've lived with. Gyptosaurus, Lufengosaurus, and Theropod Sinosaurus, and Ishanosaurus. So yeah, really, really cool animal, and really nice to see it represented in Jurassic World Evolution. Love the grade of evolution because we do have a lot of early sauropods now, or prosauropods. Before it was pretty much like just Platysaurus and Archosaurus or something, but we have like a pretty good idea of how sauropods got big and got on four legs and things like that and how they evolved. So it really shows that it wasn't just a continuous. A lot of things developed differently and all that, and I think it's really, really cool. It's never as simple as it seems. Now we know that a lot of adaptations would have evolved independently and not just as they evolved as sauropods. They would have evolved differently in different lineages, and then others would re-evolve them and lose them again. It was kind of really, really weird. But yeah, really cool. Love the colours on it as well. Definitely has come out wonderfully. Okay, so next up, we've got another Master Duke one. This one's going to be a remaster, or you could say remake. This is Master Duke's Carnotaurus. So this one is not quite, oh, doing it again. Why are you going to do this to me? Alright. This one's kind of a lot more simple mod. So let's have a look at this guy. So this one just kind of changes the anatomy to fit more, the Jurassic Park one to fit more accurately. It's not a huge change, but I'm just going to go over some of the changes here. You can see that head's been definitely shortened up a bit and fits more. Really tall head Carnotaurus has. And also a little bit longer, I think, brow horns as well, which is really cool. Quite a long neck going on. I don't think he's based this off the Demon Carnotaurus, so it's kind of got that nicer texture with the bigger scales. We actually do have a pretty good idea of what Carnotaurus' skin would have looked like now. So it's very kind of similar to elephants. It used to be believed it would have osteoderms like that, but they're actually more scattered around the body. And a lot of them would have actually converged on elephants, because both being large animals, they need to be able to get rid of heat easily. So that kind of patterns would have helped better with their thermoregulation, which is really, really cool. You see quite a long neck. Carnotaurus does have quite a long neck, and then you can see all these little bumps along its top here. It looks really, really nice. One cool thing about the arms is they have a huge scapula or huge shoulder, but these tiny little arms, and they face backwards, unlike the one in the original game. And they've still got their four fingies at the back there, so that's really, really interesting. Probably could have given that one a little bit bigger. Really, really cool. That long torpedo body that they've got and the long legs, like the opposite of a Jungosaurus. They've got very long legs and very big feet as well, you know. I know one thing a lot of Jurassic World Evolution does is makes the feet a little bit too big. But still, that's really cool regardless, and that nice long tail. So, really, really awesome. I love the Demon Carnotaurus color as well, because that looks really, really nice. And I like the texture. Not quite as accurate, because I don't think he's actually changed the texture. I think the best one, it must be Pickle's one, because I think he changed the texture to better fit Carnotaurus, because we do have preserved skin from Carnotaurus. I think he did that, and I think that's the best one. Really, really cool. But still, if you want something that's a little bit more Jurassic Park stylized, that better fits the style of the game, this is definitely one for you. And it does fit anatomically pretty well, which is cool. Yeah, you know, I love Carnotaurus. Really, really awesome animal. So you run off and do your thing. So next up, we've got a Megaraptoran, Mussaurus. Really, really awesome. So let's have a wonderful look at this guy. Okay, which one should we pick? I'll go with you, since you're like the basic blonde one. Well, not blonde, you're like a purplish. We'll go with you. Look at this really cool guy here. Oh no, we'll go with you, since you're probably a little bit more angle there. The green and the brown doesn't go that well together, but that's alright. There's so many different skins, it doesn't bother me too much. You got Mussaurus, which means wall thief. is a genus of Megaraptoran theropod from the Sierra Basona Formation and found in Argentina. And is not known from too much. It's known from like a single specimen with partial skull, ribs, pelvis, leg, and other like assorted elements. But it was first discovered in 2001. Was found in Plaza Huncul in that time, and then it was described. The remains were secured, and then 2016 was named as the type specimen is Mussaurus barasiensis. Was described by Rofado Annabelle Correa and Philip John Curry. And its name is Latin Mussus, which means wall, because it was found at a canyon wall, and raptor as in Caesar, because it's a raptor, Megaraptor. And it's found in Sierra Basona Formation. So the holotype was found in layered Sierra Basona Formation dated to the Cornasian. You can say that. So it's probably a little bit later in the, a little bit like mid-Cretaceous around there. Consists of a partial skeleton with the skull of an immature individual, so it's very likely it got bigger. The skeletal elements, partial skeleton, it has a brain case, and we can tell it's not mature because the brain case isn't completely fused and all that, and lots of other elements that I'm not going to go into, all the different bones. But there's if you look at the Wikipedia, there's like a reconstructed skeleton that shows you the parts that were preserved. But yeah, really cool animal. So in terms of its size, it was estimated to be about 6 meters long, but immature because of the sutures in the brain hadn't developed yet. So it's very likely this was an immature individual and could have got bigger. But 6 meters is good for like what we know now. And analysis of the skull actually found some previously unknown features of Megaraptorids, so it's kind of helped a lot. And actually, it's actually one of the more complete Megaraptorids, so we have a better idea of how to classify them now. And in terms of classification, these guys actually show a lot of similarities, because the Megaraptoran, I'll probably go into this another time, but Megaraptorans are kind of really weird in terms of where they place in the dinosaur family tree. Some people think they're related to Coelurosaurs, so things like Tyrannosaurus, so they may be related to Tyrannosaurs, like a sister group to them. Some think that they may actually be related to other ones, such as Allosaurids or Ceratopsians. No, not Ceratopsians, Ceratosaurids. Ceratopsians are bird-hip dinosaurs, and that's another one. But more related to like Allosaurids and things like that, Neviraptorids, things like that. So it's kind of really, where do they go on the tree? Where do they go? So one thing as well is the brain case. Actually, this is a great example. This actually shows more similarities to non-Maniraptor and Coelurosaurs. So that basically includes anything that's not a Maniraptor. So basically, Tyrannosaurs and anything like that. And then to non-Coelurosaurs such as Allosaurids or Ceratosaurids, although they reptile encephalization quadrant, or the basically brain to body size ratio, is more similar to things like Allosaurus, Sinraptor, and Giganotosaurus. That was likely not quite as smart, or their brain just wasn't as big and developed as Tyrannosaurs, so a little bit basal in the tree, but still really, really cool. So, as I mentioned, Megaraptorans, we really don't know. They were once believed to be dromaeosaurs because of that Megaraptor had that big claw, and it was thought to be that was on the toes. But then we found out, oh no, it's on the arms. And then since being classified as Allosaurids, Carnosaurs, or Tyrannosaurids, Coelurosaurs, so it's kind of been really where do they go kind of thing. Most recently, and most evidence suggests that they are now related to like Tyrannosaurids, so like non-Maniraptor Coelurosaurs. That's where kind of we think they are now, but it's still a little bit controversial. It's neither here nor there. It's just because Megaraptorids are so fragmentary, it's kind of hard to figure out with such few remains, but it's kind of neither here nor there, but things like that. But in terms of Megaraptorids, or Megaraptorids, how they fit, these guys are more closely related to things like Aestodon and Megaraptor and Maip, so those kind of later South American ones. That's probably what they're more closely related to, for example. And in terms of pathologies, the specimen itself actually shows some severe injuries with tooth marks that were likely infected by another theropod on its brain case as well. And due to the infections, it actually, the entire left side of the occiput was actually deformed, and some ribs were infections. So we don't know how it died, but it's likely that it could have had this infection and died, or lived a while and maybe died from another reason. But it shows that these guys were probably living pretty rough lives. But yeah, really, really cool. Mussauraptor. really awesome. I like this like color here. They're just the basic ones fine for me. It's just I think the pattern colors could just be a little bit less saturated. Other than that, I think it's really really good because Master Dude always does a great job with these mods. Definitely a big fan. How beautiful. All right, so we're gonna let them run off and do their thing. So that should be the last one from there. Okay, so next one, we're going to the lagoon. This one was released for Halloween because it's very spooky and scary. We have got Abyssalosaurus, which is a plesiosaur. So let's get stuck into that one. Look at this wonderful guy here. So we'll have a look at you since you're in the light. We'll probably have to change it so you can see the glowing, but look at these wonderful guys. So this is Abyssalosaurus, which is a really cool animal. So these guys are an extinct genus of cryptoclidid, so they're related to animals such as cryptoclidis, Kyphicea, animals like that. They're a plesiosaur known from the early Cretaceous of Western Russia, or the Chezhak province. And very interesting animal because they seem to have a lot of adaptations to living in the deep ocean, so we're going to go into that as well. So it's really only known from the holotype, the museum of which is in the Museum of Chezhak Natural History Society, which is a partial postcranial, and dates to the latest Havonian stage of the Cretaceous, about 133 to 130 million years ago. And it's thought to occupy an intermediate position between the late Jurassic, was initially thought to be like an intermediate animal between the late Jurassic kind of Carnotaurus and Thanatotheristes, and then later ones such as Kyphicea and the large filter-feeding ones like Manura and things like that. But it's actually now considered them to be the first reliable record of that group in Russia, and actually shows these guys are actually a more derived cryptoclidid closer to Columbosaurus, which is a really, really another cool one. Yeah, I think is more interesting is what makes Abyssalosaurus more interesting is its believed adaptations, because we all know we love the deep sea things. So these guys were a largest plesiosaur. I was going to say pterosaur. They measured about 7 meters long and weighed just under 2 tons. And they have a skull length of about 30 centimeters long, and the neck length was half of their body length was about 11 feet or 3.5 meters. So a lot of it was described in 2019 in great detail, which is really good. It was originally discovered and described in 2011. It was originally described in 2011, but 2019 it had like a big description, so it really described it well. And the maxilla actually is noted to possess features similar to other immature, like elasmosaurids, which is well. And the apex cutting edge deflects at a 110-degree angle, which is quite interesting. And its overall skull structure is quite similar to cryptoclidis, as they have big, large, rounded eyes, more so than other cryptoclidids. So very big eyes for a cryptoclidid. And its overall skull, as you can see, is very short, triangular, which is really interesting. Another thing as well is that its gastralia, or kind of belly ribs that a lot of like crocodiles and things have, dinosaurs have as well, has pachyostosis, which makes the animal less buoyant. So this is believed to be an adaptation that also help be more resistant to turbulence, and also their flippers have these pachystosis as well, and the rear flippers are longer than the front flippers, which is a trait seen in other Columbosaurians. And based on this pretty much means these guys were really efficient divers and able to hover in a diagonal position above the seabed while searching for food. So this is adaptations that make them heavier, so they pretty much better are able to sink into the water column, and plus those big eyes as well suggests that these guys were well adapted for living in deeper water. So very much like beaked whales and sperm whales and those kind of animals of today. That's kind of similar ecology, which is really interesting. And I'll get a little bit more into that. As I mentioned initially, it was thought to be more closely related to like an intermediate between late Jurassic cryptoclidids and then your later ones that include like Kyphicea. Later, though, it suggests to be a Columbosaurid cryptoclidid, which is more closely related to things like Columbosaurus and those animals like that. which is quite interesting. But as peculiar anatomy, it's actually noted that these guys, because paedomorphic traits. So this is something I'm going to explain. Paedomorphic means they've got they look like juveniles. So they things like big eyes, rounded features tend to be things that associate with babies. Some animals will keep those as they get older for different adaptations, like for example living on islands. And not Kaifekia, Abyssosaurus, a great example of that because they have these large eyes, and that's something a lot of as well. Not a lot of, should have think my words. A lot of animals will retain those, like big eyes. Babies have big eyes. Some animals will keep that because they need to rely on vision. But they are well adapted because of these loss of genetic stages. But they also exhibit behaviors that are quite similar to younger animals, so like slow sedentary lifestyles, along with those pedomorphic traits. So such organisms will typically spend a great deal of time growing up and have a long life expectancy. So example, we use sperm whales. Behavior and morphology allow it to rest for a long time after a series of deep dives. So based on that, because of these loss of traits and also the quite dense flippers and belly ribs to make it heavier, this suggests that these guys were probably fed primarily in the bathyl zone, so kind of like the midnight zone, the dark, deep parts of the ocean, like deep sea feeders. And they would rise up to the surface to breathe, very similar to sperm whales, beaked whales, as I mentioned. And these guys were probably eating cryptoclidids and of the cryptoclidids. They were feeding on crustaceans, cephalopods, pretty much anything deep sea that they'll find. They would potentially probably eat smaller plesiosaurs if they came around them. But they were present in that environment. So these guys, what really makes them weird and interesting is that they're deep sea adaptations, and because of the horror kind of Halloween theme of it, I think it's been well represented in their a depiction here. I really love like the big teeth and all that. Really, really awesome. So that's a wonderful job. So let's quickly go into settings and have a look at. No, that's the wrong one. Sandbox settings. We'll just quickly go and put it to a night. Apply. Oh, so let's go night. Oh, there we are, night. So you can see the eyes glowing, which makes it spooky and scary. Be really, really cool. So this is very much like what they'd be doing in the wild. They'd be in the deep sea environment, trying to catch food. Very similar to like sperm whales, big whales, as I mentioned. But yeah, really, really cool. So let's quickly just put that back to normal day, and then we'll carry on. So yeah, another really, really awesome one. This was done by Hyper SGYT, and all of those people that do that. Really, really done wonderfully. Let them swim around and have a look. But yeah, Hyper SGYT, Altero Hammond, they kind of all teamed up. Really a team effort to bring the Abyssosaurus to Jurassic World Evolution 2, and has come out rather wonderfully, I think. Really, really cool. Okay, so now we're moving on to this next pack. So this is a very interesting pack. This is kind of done by Haswa Tree. This is the Daspletosaurinae pack. So this is a group of dinosaurs that includes Daspletosaurus and potentially Thanatotheristes, as we'll go through. So this is a group of dinosaurs with a few different species, and we're going to go through some of the species differences, of course, because if we're going to do a pack about the genuses, we're going to talk about that. I've already covered Daspletosaurus a couple times, so we're going to start off with the interesting one. This is Thanatotheristes, I believe you say that. So this is Thanatotheristes. Oh, doing it again. Thanatotheristes delagorum, I believe you say that. With the genus name. It was described in 2020. So its name means Reaper of Death, or literally like Death Harvester, because the Greek god Thanatos, or Greek Titan, or whatever, is death, and then or harvester. So kind of comes from Death Harvester, and is a genus of Tyrannosaurid dinosaur that from the late Cretaceous of Laramidia, and lived between 80 to 79.5 million years ago. So it's typically known from only one species, Telegorum, and fossils have been found in Alberta, Canada, living with medium-sized ceratopsians, such as Oh, I think it's in my throat. I think I'll fix that. There we are. Sorry about that. Found like Xeno Ceratops and also like Celebiceratops thambi, for example. But the holotype is just known from the right maxilla, right jugal, and pretty much just parts of the skull. And the length of the skull was estimated to be about 800 millimeters long, or about 31 inches long. But the holotype individual was not mature when it died. And there's another referred specimen that needs to be another stub adults. We don't know how big Thanatotheristes got as an adult, but it was quite likely smaller. And yeah, in terms of classification, it was formally described, erected a new clade within the Tyrannosaurs, or Tyrannosauridae, Daspletosaurinae. So this is a sister taxon compared to like Zuni, Tyrannosaurus, or things like that. And then Daspletosaurinae includes the three species of Daspletosaurus and Thanatotheristes. And another one that's undescribed. And the existence of these showed that there was like a geographical separation from the clades, with like a clade Albusauridie living in Biotinata and Lythronax and things like guys living in the south of Little Media, but then the Albertosaurinae and Daspletosaurinae living in northern Canada and northern USA and Canada, which is quite interesting. So in terms of the phylogenetic analyses, Daspletosaurinae, these guys are probably quite basal, I'd say, to the group. And we don't know too much about this. I'm very sorry. I don't know why I've got so much today, but analysis of the subadult Torosaurus frontal by you in 2020 suggests that they would have had basically can't describe as new species. A lot of people have pretty much said it's pretty much identical to other Daspletosaurus, so it might not be. It may be a new species Daspletosaurus, or just lumped into one of the species of Daspletosaurus aurini. So it's kind of been like, and this just means more study, potentially more fossils will help. But often there has been some studies that these guys just might be Daspletosaurus. Think about a lot of dinosaur paleontologists. They like to put a genus and species on everything, but we really don't know. We don't have enough distinguishing features. I don't believe a lot of Philip J. Carey's like, no, it might actually just be its own thing, and a lot of these characters may be invalid because of the specimen and will make misinterpretation, things like that. But yeah, really complicated taxonomy stuff. But yeah, really cool animal. Nice to see a good mod, like the variation there. So let you run off and do your thing. So I want to go into like the difference. We'll go into talking about the species of these guys. So that's going to be really interesting. Let's see if I can find the thing. Okay, here we are. So we're going to be starting off with the later species. So this guy comes from 77 million years ago. So this is the first species. Comes right after Thanatotheristes. So we've got the Daspletosaurus taurusus. So we're going to have a look at you with the planet dinosaur colors. Okay, so let's take a look at these guys. So this is really wonderful. Let's see. We'll have a look at you because you look like in a nice pose. This is the Spinosaurus taurusus. So this was the first species that came round. So one of the ways you can kind of tell it apart is some like really superficial things on the maxilla. But what this represents is a really interesting line of anagenesis. So anagenesis is when one species evolves into another, and we can see from that time for about 77 to 75 million years ago that three species, or even if you include Thanatotheristes as one, you could say that's the first one, and then you can see them evolve over time into the new species. So a lot of them are pretty minor differences, and some would even argue why even calling them different species, I believe, but this is kind of what's been classified so far. So this is Spinosaurus taurusus, the first one. So let me see. This is actually the type specimen as well, the holotype. I believe the paratype is of Taurusus. So this is a specimen that they lived around the Dinosaur Park formations for about 76 to 74 million years ago. which is quite interesting. And it was also, I believe, the first one described. So these guys would have lived with Albertosaurus and things like that. Be really, really interesting. Not too different. A lot of them are not that different in terms of size. I believe Dinosaurs might actually be the one of the bigger ones. So these guys would have been about 9 meters long and about 2.2 meters tall at the hip. So not as huge as likely later Tyrannosaurs, but still pretty big. 9 meters long, big animal. Things like that. So yeah, really, really cool. So this kind of goes along the evolution of all the time. And then we're going to carry on with having a look at the babies. So I'll let you run off and do your thing. So this is like the juvenile one as well. I did pick the Banded Dinosaur one because I know a lot of people like their documentary skins. And plus the baby one has the Planet Dinosaur skin as well. So one thing as well that's really interesting is this makes Tyrannosaurus even more weird. So we know from the growth, we had done a lot of research like into Tyrannosaurus as well, how they grow over time. So animals like Spinosaurus, they didn't quite. Tyrannosaurus itself, when it was growing, it had like a huge growth spurt at about 18 or so, and kind of had those two, you could say, ecomorphs, or you could say niche petitioning. So the younger ones were like the speedy ones that looked very much like Ailurus and Quinchaosaurus, but then they grew up very quickly. It had a huge growth spurt to become the big bad T-Rex that we all know and love. But what's really weird about these guys, they did have that kind of faster growth, but it was nowhere near as severe as T-Rex and a lot of those earlier, so things like the Spinosaurus, Gorgosaurus, and Albertosaurus. So they were pretty much nowhere near as like huge growth, which is interesting. So they did spend a lot of time of juveniles, but they did go through growth spurt once they reached sexual maturity. But it was nowhere near as much as T-Rex. These guys would have probably put on at most about 180 kilograms a year, or 400 pounds per year, based on the mass estimates of about just under 2 tons for an adult. And another thing with these Spinosaurs, they were quite a bit bulkier than like Gorgosaurus and Albertosaurus, so they would have gone a bit bigger and probably needed that little bit more mass as they grew. So they did have a bit of a growth spurt, but T-Rex was just another level. I believe it put on potentially like 800 kilograms or something like that. Because they got quite big, of course, being like 9-10 tons. So they had to grow that big as well. But as well, they actually show that juveniles were rare in the fossil record. Subadults were far more common. And this is believed to be because of biases or because potentially babies had a low mortality rate. So a lot of babies would grow up to be adults because of the implied potential social behaviors of Spinosaurus. There's been evidence of potentially them being social, along with other tyrannosaurids like Albertosaurus and things like that. So that's a very interesting you could go into. Be really, really cool. In terms of Tauruses, these guys would have lived, I believe, in the Altman Formation. Those would have lived with animals like Brachylophosaurus, Albertoceratops, and other Thanatotheristes, Thanatotheristes, Troodontids, Dromaeosaurs, things like that. And I believe may have coexisted as well with Gorgosaurus, whether that's considered a different species as well. So that's kind of the famous one. But yeah, really, really cool. Let's see the adults and the babies. You can see they look pretty similar. Not too much different there. So yeah, we're going to let you run off and do your thing. Have a look at the next species. So the next one is Wilsoni. So this is the next one in history. This is one's from about 76 million years ago. Okay, so this is Wilsoni. This is the next one in history from 76 million years ago. Let's see if we can find. We'll have a look at you. I like the patterns on this one. There's all sorts of different patterns as cosmetics if you want to go have a look at that yourself. So I believe Taurus is actually kind of the better known one. Let me see if I can find. So yeah, Taurus is the first one. This one is Wilsoni. a lot of the major differences as well. You can kind of look. They've got. If you look at the face, you can see they're not hugely different, but definitely a different species. Just from minor changes in the skull there. That's kind of how they've been defined by the people that have been studying them. And there is overlap as well, and they believe to be so they would have all potentially coexisted sometime. They would have, because anagenesis is not like, oh, you become a new species now. It would be gradual, so it's very likely that the two species would, or even the three of them, would have all kind of coexisted together and then interbred maybe, and before they fully evolved into the next species. And one thing as well is also there's other claims that maybe like Wilsoni may just be Tauruses as well. This taxonomy, it might just be a later population of Tauruses. Some of them believe that the Spinosaurus did not actually evolve from Thanatotheristes, but we don't know because of the bad sampling. It's taxonomy being taxonomy as well, of course. And it's taxonomy being taxonomy. Can't say much about that. So yeah, not too much of a different habitat. It probably just would have changed over time. And that's the next one. And then we've got Wilsoni, I think, also has... no, it's Faunari, that's the next one. So Wilsoni, potentially synonymous, but they would have lived a little bit earlier, a little bit later in the formation. I believe these are two medicine as well they may have been from. Yeah, really, really interesting. Not too much different in terms of ecology, mainly just some minor differences, but anagenesis. So that's really cool. Let me see if I can find them. I believe Wilsoni may have actually been from the Jew. No, that's the wrong one. Alright, now we're not going to worry about that. But yeah, really, really cool. And gives us another excuse to look at different colours. Really, really awesome. As mentioned, synonymous. It's taxonomy being taxonomy, but here's Wilsoni. So I'm going to let you run off and do your thing. Next up, we have got Horneri. So this is the latest one. Let me see. The latest one. So this one lived about 75 million years ago. So, Horneri, this was the latest one described. It was described in 2017. So, not too long ago. And it's found from partial skulls and vertebrae in JWE2, things like that. And it was found to be a new species as well, belonging to a new species. That's D. wilsoni is kind of that one. How's it 17? So Wilsoni would have been the transitional one between Tauruses and Hanei, and would evolve through anagenesis. But that's been refuted as well. There's a new study that's kind of been like, we don't know that much. They would have overlapped. Anagenesis may have not been a thing. So this is kind of what we're going off from that paper, which is going on originally. So Horneri was kind of the latest one described. I think it is. Yeah, Horneri was 2017, and then there's Wilsoni from 2022. So this is the intermediate between Horneri and I think I'm getting confused. Wilsoni was that one, and then Horneri is kind of the latest one, or the youngest one. So this is the one that was quite famous when it was described for, having a crocodile-like condition, and people were like, this is believed to be the latest one. But I'm going to explain why this all might be bunk and might be crap. But in 2023, they argued that the stratigraphic ranges of the three species and the unnamed species were clearly overlapping, so they wouldn't have been a good factor of speciation. And then D. horni, the most basal species, and despite the fact... So the phylogeny says that Horneri is the youngest in terms of its anatomy, but stratigraphically it's actually the youngest. So it's the oldest. It's the oldest looking, but it's actually the youngest in the stratigraphy. So that's basically just gets rid of the whole bunk hypothesis as well. And then that D. wilsoni may be a junior synonym, or basically just another specimen of D. tauruses, and there's a lot of lack of characteristics that distinguish the species. Also, there's claims that the Spinosaurus are evolved from Thanatotheristes, and there's no support on base of morphological or stratigraphical data, and that anagenesis is not actually supported, mainly because of such the poor fossil record, because the fossil record is very, very poor, and a lot of these big assumptions, you can't really make off a couple fossils. Like, it's really hard to do. But yeah, really, really interesting that I think we got this anyway. This is kind of the most recent taxonomy, and it may not be even a thing. They might just all just be one species. They might just all be two Tauruses. But also, Thanatotheristes may be a species of that. It's just so fragmentary, don't know. It's because people like to try and find things, and we're most likely not there because it's geography, as I mentioned, with Wilsoni being, was it, no, Horneri, I think, actually. Horneri is the most basal species in terms of its anatomy, but in terms of its stratigraphy, it is actually the youngest. So it's really weird in that regard. So yeah, it's either kind of debates. That's kind of part and part for paleontology. So many debates and talks of doing things with such little information. It's really hard to make those kind of assumptions. But yeah, it's a really good excuse to get rid of all these different skins and give us all these different kind of things going on. So yeah, really, really cool. I like the patterns on this one. Came out really nice. Definitely a big fan. So yeah, we're going to let you run off and do your thing, and then we're going to look at the babies. Let's have a look at the little babies. This one's a little different. It almost looks a little bit more like... I don't think we have much in terms of juveniles, but yeah. This looks probably a little bit younger than the other species there. I believe it was Taurus's baby. This is probably meant to be a little bit younger one, right before their growth spurt. So as I mentioned, very similar to a lot of like Gorgosaurus and things like that. They would have gone through a bit of a growth spurt as they got into like their late teenagers, from what we know. But it was nowhere near as extreme as Tyrannosaurus. But they would have changed a little bit. So a younger one, maybe before the earlier growth stage, probably maybe like 10 years or so, they would have looked probably a little bit like this. A little bit leaner and meaner, because they were probably going after faster prey. And then they got a little bit bigger and bulkier as they aged to deal with bigger animals, but also probably to better fight for mates and things like that. Yeah, really, really cool. Definitely a big fan. So I think this Despedosaurini pack is a great way of talking about how complicated taxonomy can be, especially when you're dealing with lots of fragmentary animals, especially like Wilsonias, like a lot of them are known for only one specimen. Then you try to erect a whole species from that. It just shows how complicated it all can really be, and how often terrible it is in that regard. So, gonna let you run off and do your thing. And another animal with complicated taxonomy. We've got another one from Master Dude here. So we've got Siats, which is a really interesting animal to get into. So let's have a look at this. I really love this pattern, so we're going to let you walk off and do your thing. Oh, kind of doing weird angles for me. Right. I think it's probably just because I put him in there. Alright, we'll have a look at you, because you're like a reddish one. You look quite nice. So this is Siats. So Siats is an extinct large theropod, comes from the Cedar Mountain Formation of Utah in the late Cretaceous. So it's the United States. It is known from a single species, Siats mecorium, and it was originally classed as a Megaraptorum, but they obviously have very complicated relationships. And one of the more recent, there's lots of like things it could be. It could either be, as I mentioned, already described as a Megaraptorum, but has also been described as a Neovanatoride, so related to Neovenator, animals like that. Allosauride or a Silurosaur, even a Tyrannosaurid, so its taxonomy has been a bit shaky, but we'll get into that. So, it was first discovered in 2012 by Lindsay E. Zano and Peter J. Marcellesi. In 2013, it was described as Siats mecorium. And Siats is a man-eating monster from US mythology, and the species name Meciorum is from the late geologist John Cadwell Meeker, who helped support it. as well as and their daughter kind of Liz Mika was also part of the volunteers of the project. So it was named to honor a dead geologist, which was really, really awesome. But the holotype is known from a partial postcranial with some elements from like Ilian, and then another part was discovered in 2008 in the bones which protruding, and it was collected from 2008 to 2010 from the Mussaurus member of the Cedar Mountain Formation in Utah, and lived around the early Cenomanian period of the Cretaceous, so about 94, 95 million years ago. So the holotype itself consists of material from a single individual that is skeletally immature, which is we'll get into is quite interesting, based on neural arches and things, and has 4 anthropomorphies or unique traits to kind of show that it's actually quite different, and is actually one of the largest known theropods from its place in time. And using a femur circumference to kind of find the weight, they found it to be about 4 tons, which is quite huge. And it's and as I mentioned, it was still growing, and it was already comparable in size to things like Carnotaurus and Saurophaganax. So even though it's a skeletally immature individual, it was already comparable in size to like 10, 11 meters long. So still a huge animals. In 2019, there was kind of estimates as believed to be about 11 meters long and about 4.7 tons or 4 to 5 tons of body mass. So still a huge animal and not even fully grown. That probably would have been pretty close. And we don't know if, as I mentioned, the taxonomy is a bit weird, but if it's true that it is more related to things like allosaurids and things like that, I'd also discovered that allosaurids do not yield dominance into North America to Tyrannosaurs until the late Cretaceous. So Acrocanthosaurus was also like a kind of animal, like the allosaurid. But we don't know whether it was near Venatorid or Tyrannosaurid, depending on that. Both interpretations appearing in the same paper, and also being a Megaraptoran. So it's very following that line. If it is a allosaurid, it could have been one of the late surviving ones and then potentially gone extinct and allowed the Tyrannosauruses to get big and kind of Tyrannosaurs to get big and take over North America and become T-Rex we all know and love. But yeah, taxonomy is very, very complicated for this guy. As I mentioned, 2013, it was originally described as a Megaraptoran, so related to things like Aestodon and Maip and those kind of animals. Then in 2014, there was a juvenile Megaraptor specimen, and it's actually more likely to be Tyrannosaurid, and rather than Neovenatoroids, that's such as Siats, which is really weird. But the most recent taxonomies, you could say, bring it as a Ailurus. It indicates that it may be like a Megaraptoran or basal Megaraptoran, or a Tyrannosaurid more similar to like Zhejiang Long, the really basal Tyrannosaurid, basal Megaraptoran, and things like that. So that's kind of the most recent one. Though, as I mentioned, Megaraptorids are also sometimes considered as part of the Neovenator order, or Neoraptoridae, so that kind of group. So that's kind of that taxonomy there. So this is very much the interpretation that it's a Neoveraptorid, but it could be other things. So yeah, but it's still really, really cool. A very interesting animal. And this is like one of the last big non-Tyrannosaurid carnivores in North America before those kind of came in. And then we had things like Brigafinator and then Tetraphonius and then later Daspletosaurus, Gorgosaurus, and T-Rex, all going through there. So that's really, really cool. And I really like this color. This is the alpha one, or the one special one that he made. I love the red and the greens. Looks really, really nice. And it's also one of those complicated dinosaurs with complicated taxonomies, but doesn't stop Master Doot or Haswood Tree and any of their modders giving us a really, really awesome animal there. So see, that's really, really cool. So yeah. So I think this will be a great place to end the video. So I really, really, really hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to hit the little bell icon to get notified of anything. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.